It would be.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Central Otago District Council. Welcome to members of the public who are with us both in person and online. Welcome to press members who are here. Good to have you here with us today. And welcome to Peter, first full council meeting. So thank you. Great to have you here. Tamia, you're going to start us off with karakia.
Yeah. Kia ora tēnā rino, kia whakapapa pona me ti moana. Kei hua rahi mā tātou e tīnara, e tīnei rā. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou kia tātou katoa. Homi e, kui e.
Tamia? We have apologies today from Nigel, Tracy and Martin. Somebody want to move those apologies. Thanks to you. Seconded Tamia. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving us to our public forum today. We have quite a packed house for our public forum. First up from Volunteer South online is Gillian White. Just a reminder to each speaker, you have 5 minutes. Gillian, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'll just get going, Tim. Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. So thanks for the opportunity to talk today. I'm Gillian White, the regional lead for Volunteer South, and we promote, support and strengthen volunteering across the region. We're part of a network of 17 volunteer centres nationwide and a member of Volunteering New Zealand. I'm here today to talk about a new initiative, which is currently called the Lighthouse Initiative, and this is built around a collaborative approach for a broad community impact. It's a collaboration between Central Lakes Trust, QLDC, CODC, Sports Central, ACOS, Alexandra Community House, Cromwell and Districts Community Trust, Whakatipu Community Hub and Volunteer South. And discussions started back in 2021 about issues community groups and sports groups were facing. For example, lack of resources, struggles to find board members, and a lack of clarity around strategic planning or funding. In August 2021, Matt Begg at Central Lakes Trust brought together a group of people working across the region in the community sector to explore in more depth the needs of community groups and issues they were facing. We looked at key elements of other successful models from across New Zealand to explore what was already out there and working in communities similar to ours. We also brought on an independent contractor to help us delve deeper, holding a broader community hui to explore the issues that we were seeing and consult with a wider range of people working across the community sector and also across a range of sectors and areas such as sports, environment and social support. We collated information about what we're hearing and looked at how we could collectively support a region-wide initiative that would help strengthen community groups and organisations. Jump forward a year and we've developed a fit-for-purpose model for our region, which has been discussed and refined with input from community groups and organisations locally. Priorities that we've identified are to create a knowledge hub with access to good, consistent information, to develop the government skills base of community organisations, to improve organisational capability and strategic planning, and also to provide support and training for community organisations. As a selected backbone organisation, Volunteer South is now working with the steering group to confirm funding and will recruit a project lead when the majority of funding is secured. Once in place, this project lead will work in a partnership approach, working with organisations and individuals already in the community to ensure wide participation across the communities that we work in. The initiative is a result of many discussions over several months by many passionate and committed community organisations, including councils and funders throughout the Queenstown Lakes District and Central Otago District Council. And we can see the opportunity that this initiative would bring to communities in this region. We're grateful for the opportunity to apply for funds, and I welcome any questions that you might have today.
Lovely. Thank you, Gillian. Questions, councillors? We'll have read the paper on the Lighthouse project that we'll be dealing with very shortly. So, no questions? All right. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Next from Central Otago Health Incorporated, Carolyn Tamlin. Carolyn, feel free to, there you are. Feel free to come up. Just any one of those things. Welcome, Carolyn.
Namaste. I'll be brief. Caroline Tamlin from Roxburgh, representing Tegea Valley. Excuse me. On Central Otago Health Incorporated, which is associated with Dunstan Hospital. I'm standing in for Tracy Peterson, and I think Tracy's already briefed everybody on what COAC and COSAL and all that everybody does. I'd rather answer questions than tell you about Dunstan Hospital. Does anyone have any clarification questions?
It's a good report we've been given, so.
Oh, great. So we use the grant money for our core business, which is appointing directors. So obviously we have to advertise. And we pay our marvelous secretary. So just running ourselves, that's what we use our grant for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dan Young from Life Education Trust. Hello, Dan. Feel free to have a seat or stand, just whichever you prefer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Dana. I'm from Life Education Trust Heartland at Otago Southland. So we're also, otherwise known as Herald the Giraffe. So we run a health and wellbeing program that we deliver to schools via our mobile classroom. Classrooms fitted out with technology and interactive learning programs, and we deliver our program to each school in that classroom. So we require funding for our operational costs. Our program has had such huge demand that we've actually just bought a second classroom, employed a second educator, and bought a second tractor unit to tow that classroom. We like to keep the cost of schools to a minimum, so it costs about $24 per student, and we only charge the schools $4 per student. So that's community funding comes in to subsidise it for schools. Yeah, so we actually see every school in Central Otago. We cover a wide area, so we go right from Gore to Makaurau, and we're into Dunedin as well. And we see every single school in Central Otago. And so last year we still were just under 2,000 students in this area. Yes.
Brilliant. Questions, Dan?
Do you have to get a second Harold as well?
We've got one big Harold as our mascot who people get in, like get the Blossom Festival and some in there. And we do have two small Harolds, which are the puppets inside the classroom.
the mystery.
Yeah.
Not a puppet.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Maggie Hope and I suspect Dave Ritchie from the Central Otago Heritage Trust. Welcome. Thank you. Oh, you had a video for us, haven't you?
Just a web page, really.
Oh, right.
Just a screenshot. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in support of Central Otago Heritage Trust's application to the Community Fund. We're appreciative of the grants we've received from the Council over the past 4 years. We continue to work towards achieving our tasks and goals that we set out in our strategic plan. I'd like to quickly mention some of the heritage sector's recent outcomes achieved since last speaking to you early this year. Our membership has grown to 23 organisations, all of whom have an interest in protecting, preserving and celebrating Central Otago's heritage. We recently welcomed 2 new members, the Cambrian Valley Trust and the Cromwell and District Community Trust. We are now working with and supporting these groups on a couple of projects advocating for the inclusion of Cambrians as a 6th heritage precinct within the guidelines and supporting the development of a park reconstruction of the Chinese settlement in Cromwell. The funding we received from Council has enabled us to leverage further funding for the Oral History Project. Last month we secured funding from Central Lakes Trust, enabling us to sustain our Oral History program for an additional 2 years. Currently, we have completed 86 oral histories, prioritising interviews with many of the region's well-known and respected elders. These stories are securely stored in our comprehensive online and offline memory repository.
So this gives you just a screenshot of the interviews that are currently published online. So now it doesn't matter where you are, you can listen to these interviews. So you just, there's some filters there that you can check on themes and locations if you're interested in a particular location of an interview. So we've just started loading those, so there's much more to come.
That's great.
And you can see a few familiar faces in there. So encourage you to go and have a look.
And also, if you have names of people who you think we as a community would benefit from having oral history, we are always looking for names to come forward. We have quite a few interviews. We've trained over 30 interviewers so far in the week on technique. Our Heritage Talks program continues to garner strong interest with over 700 attendees in the past year. The subjects of these talks were put forward by our members and the wider community, covering topics such as natural heritage, gold mining, wine and coal, to mention a few. We are committed to maintaining this program of events into the future. Our quarterly newsletter, available in both print and online versions, serves as a valuable platform for our members to stay updated on the latest happenings in the heritage scene. It also provides a means for the sector to share their news, projects and upcoming events. Additionally, the newsletter plays a vital role in connecting us to the many stories that have helped shape Central Otago's identity.
So you,
And so we have some copies. I don't know whether you've seen it. You may have received it digitally. One came out a couple of days ago. So there are some copies there that we produce every quarter. In early winter, we met with council staff to discuss the possibility of incorporating a Heritage Award as part of the biennial Central Otago Awards program. It was great to receive enthusiasm for this idea. We hope to progress this opportunity once the revised framework and timing for these awards has been advised to us. At my last presentation to council, I introduced two priorities that we are very keen to progress with council. Firstly, it has been 11 years since the Towards Heritage Outcomes consultation document was developed by the community. This document has helped guide our goals and work program. We think it is now time to go back to the community to challenge and refresh our aspirations for heritage. We're hopeful that the council's Community Vision project will provide a platform to start this process. Secondly, our trust has been advocating for the development of a Central Otago arts, culture and heritage strategy. We've been closely monitoring developments in the Queenstown Lakes area, where QLDC has partnered with the Three Lakes Cultural Trust to develop such a strategy. They have just completed extensive community consultation and are using this feedback to shape the strategy document. Again, the Community Vision project potentially offers a mechanism for us to do the same. We're also committed to working with council to put heritage front in mind when looking at strategic planning initiatives. We're also currently working with Tourism Central Otago on a project to obtain heritage-focused imagery for the shared visual library. We launched the Heritage in Focus photography competition last week, and we're now looking forward to seeing the entries that come in within the 3 competition entry categories for professionals, amateurs and young photographers. Finally, we recognise that many of the heritage achievements in Central Otago over the last year have only been possible due to the funding we received from council. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors?
Just one quick one. The review of the founding document, if you like, the trust, is that a huge job, do you think?
To the extent that we really want to see good community involvement. So I don't think it's a big job, but it is going to require community involvement. Yeah, so some engagement to make sure we are listening and hearing.
It'd be interesting to see just how motivated the community are. I guess with museums are sort of connected and relevant. Some of the debate that's going on about them. So yeah, that's good. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to listening to some of those interviews. Yes, it's going to be fascinating.
You're not there.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Neil Gillespie would probably be a good person to put on the question.
Your brother.
Excellent.
Yes.
All righty, Jen Bean and Rebecca DeJohn from Central Otago Arts Trust. Welcome.
Thank you also for giving us this opportunity to speak to our annual grant. I can safely say that the arts community in Central Otago is looking very healthy and bright. Forefront of our mind has been the notion of community over the last year. At the end of August, several trustees and our coordinator attended the workshop Collaboration for Stronger Communities. And this valuable session explored ways in which we can enhance collaboration, enable the collective impact, and support diverse communities to work and innovate together. We like to think that we're already quite good collaborators at CODAT. We work with many different arts and cultural groups from all sub-regions within Central Otago and also with our neighbours in Wanaka and Queenstown. We work with local government and community development officers. We work alongside local cultural and heritage organisations. And in so doing, we build on these connections, we innovate together, and together we are stronger. We've assisted with several impressive public art projects during this fiscal year, and next year looks busy and varied as well. You can view, I believe, the projects that we've worked on during the past year within Rebecca's report. During the coming year, we'll be facilitating and encouraging projects with an arts, cultural and heritage component. One of these is a collaboration between Clyde and Cromwell Museums. Next week, we meet with Three Lakes Cultural Trust to talk about amplifying our services across both Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes. In early November, following on from the great success of our first event, we host the second Cover to Cover literary event. This will be a conversation with poet, New Zealand Arts Laureate and former Henderson House resident Jenny Bornhold, who will speak about her book entitled A Garden is a Long Time. A stunning collaboration. If you haven't seen it already, I strongly advise you to try and have a look at a copy. A collaboration she did with our treasured local photographer Anne-Marie Hope Cross, whose early passing in late 22 was a tragedy for us all. So we're very thrilled to have this beautiful record. A highlight on the 12th of November will be the unveiling of the multicultural mural project in Cromwell, the outcome of a collaboration between a Central Otago-born mural artist, welcoming communities, the CODC Communication and Engagement Officer, and CODAT. And this event will be immediately followed by the opening celebration for the Bishlama, the Niban Language Week. We've long had a desire to introduce monumental public art into the rugged Central Otago landscape, and a scoping project for this is on our 23-24 schedule. We in the arts sector can be change makers, working at the intersection of public policy and community development. We've welcomed a number of new artists during this past year, many of them new residents to Central Otago. They've listed on our website and are keen to become part of the arts community, and this can only be positive for the growth of the profile of the arts within the region. We continue to provide governance and support for all these creative people, and so ensure that the arts in Central Otago are respected, valued and promoted. Without our coordinator, Rebecca de Jong, we would simply not be able to function. We're extremely grateful to Central Otago District Council for their continued financial support, which allows us to employ Rebecca. We are also, however, mindful that the project activities are constrained and that all trustees are contributing what they can within the range of their voluntary manpower and financial capacity. We will keep trying to raise the awareness and importance of all the arts to the overall enhancement of our community, and to continue promoting Central Otago as an arts destination, which is our prime objective within our arts strategy. So we look ahead once again to another year of unity, of creative energy, activity and ideas. Our trust indeed is in very good heart. So thank you once again.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen.
Any questions?
You were talking of bringing back the Central Gold Arts Awards, which I recall had some fairly good prize money. Would any of this grant go towards that prize money if it were to go ahead?
No, so the grant that we get from CODC really barely covers our core operational costs.
Ring fenced into that.
Yeah,
Yes,
really
it
fenced in.
is.
So
Yeah.
anything that we were to do with Arts Gold, for example, would all be money that we would have to apply to other organisations to get.
Sponsored.
And yeah, and the biggest issue with getting prize money is that not very many funding organisations fund prize money.
Correct.
So
That's why I asked the question.
So it would be sponsorship.
Just want to clarify that.
Mm.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Thank you.
Cool.
Glad you're joining today. And finally, we have Graham Ray. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you very much. I'm a bit out of my comfort zone here, so you just had to put up with me stumbling along. But I was going to come here to talk about the Three Waters thing and basically the lack of information that's getting out to the general public because no one really knows what it's all about. It seems that, and it always amazes me how the human race can complicate things out of all proportion to what they're trying to achieve. This is just bogged down with bureaucracy. And you try and read about it. I think Sally said go online and find about it. You'd be there for months just trying to get your way through it. And it's just a lot of giggle-gig. But that's not the real problem. I think the real problem is people are wondering which way you're going to jump, which way the council's going to jump with. And we've had no information that whatever the council's doing about all this. And a lot of people feel the more you bullshit people, the less interest they'll take. Like it gets so complicated, people come down to the, I can't be bothered with it, and they just go away from it. And they just so everybody just becomes rather lethargic about it, and it just goes through something that's seriously affecting them. What I aligned with is we remember Max Bradford. Remember Max Bradford? Yeah, he realigned the electricity and generation market, and a lot of people, and it was the guys of it was they were going to get people cheap power. Really? So what was the real reason for it? What was the real reason for it? And the real reason was investment. They wanted foreign investment. And this Onslow thing's the same. You run out of water in the electricity industry. You run out of investment. And so they look at our infrastructure, our water and our sewage, and it's they can see the same thing going there. There's investment, but there's only one difference there. They own the electricity industry. They don't own this industry yet, or they don't have control over it where they can put it up for investment. And people are wondering where you people are at with it. And I know that you are on one of the committees that was. Well, that's good because I think it was a sort of, it was conflict of interest maybe. I think that's been mentioned around a few times. And so you send out a newsletter quarterly about, I think it's a rates assessment information. So why don't you send out some information saying with this rates assessment thing going, what council are doing about things? Nobody knows what you people are doing about most things. Scully does a lot of work, but I've never seen her outside the store telling people can go along and talk about it, but I have never seen any information volunteered. There are probably meetings here and there that happen at 8 o'clock at night. So do I know, probably. Because I don't go online, I don't have online capabilities, I don't have an email address. But there's a few people around like me. So, but that's not really what I came here for. That was part of why I came here for, but why I came here is because of this tourism. And Sally already heard me go on with this one. And the council, the community board would come back and get about it, but they haven't. So that's all fine. So we've got a ward service rate, which has tourism and economic development as part of it. We have an economic development rating, which tourism and economic development is part of it. We have a promotions rating, which tourism and economic development is part of that. And then at the bottom, we have a tourism rating as well. And I'm thinking, how are you double dipping or triple dipping? And so where's all this tourism money? What's it all going into? People don't know where it's all going. They have no idea. And then to top it off, we have a government department where it's done. So who's double dipping and triple dipping? And how much money is actually going into all this? There's a lot of money going in somewhere. And your core business is not tourism. If the council want to be tourist operators, then go and start a tourism business. But the ratepayers should not be subsidising. And the farmers and the orchardists and all the tradesmen and all the people that work around here, they don't even know what you're doing with it all. They have no idea.
Okay, any questions, Dan?
I just thought to say that on the Three Waters debate, there was a lot of discussion was had, and we felt that we weren't getting portrayed in what was being discussed at this table through the media. And we let several media releases go to put our point of view of opposition to Three Waters in this format it was at the time. And we were frustrated equally as ourselves about not being felt that we were heard by the members of the public when we were put in a perspective at the media table. So there was a lot of discussion and robust discussion. And this council on us was opposed to Three Waters in any shape or form at that time.
And still are.
Yes. I doubt it won't have a government change, but yes.
What I'll do, Graham, there was a lot online and possibly, it's harder. We did put 2 ads in the newspaper to say where we sat with, and they were basically letters that we written to Minister Mahuta voicing our opposition. But what I'll do by the end of next week is put some stuff together and write to you and post it to you. We'll have your address so that you can have a copy of what we have done.
Well, it's not really me that needs, the general public needs to know, and it's all right, you're writing letters about your opposition to it all, but which way you're going to jump.
We don't get a
Should
choice.
get a choice.
That's
That's the bottom line.
the law as it stands at the moment is the law. It's like we have no choice. And it's on the books at the moment, as you said. There's an election coming up in October that this will be one of the things that people will be thinking about.
I don't think that'll make any difference, because this is all filled up by government. Filled up by Parliament, this is by government. And that's 30 to 40,000 paid employees. This idea came from someone. I have no idea who initially thought it up. And I don't think anybody probably does. But if you find out who made it up, you'll find out the reasons.
Do you want me still to write to you with that information then?
If you can, please.
Yeah,
Don't take up your time, but
Oh, no, I think it's important that you get an answer. You come and talk to us today, but we could be here for a good hour going through it. So I'll write to you and happy to have a coffee with you down in Roxburgh too.
I don't drink it.
Well, a couple of which, yeah.
But, yeah, well, that's all on my phone. It's on
Yeah,
It is?
I'm afraid so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Graham.
I'd
Appreciate
just
it.
like to say that the council are doing a good job with the Roxburgh water supply. It's good to see they're upgrading it and they're doing it really well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Right, thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate people taking the time to come and speak to us. So that leads us now to the confirmation of our minutes from the 30th of August meeting. Somebody who was there wish to move it. Thank you, Neil. Seconded Sarah. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. You all know the drill, but it always pays to remind people to disclose any interests you may have to our governance manager and ensure that they are on your list. Check your list regularly. And should anything come up today, which there is a interest or a potential interest, give good consideration to stepping away from that paper. And that brings us on to Sport Otago's grant accountability report, which is Tamer Ellie's portfolio. Tamer, yours.
Welcome.
Sorry.
Good, thank you for having us here today. My name's Owen Booth. I'm the General Manager of Sport Otago, Sport Central. We've got 2 Cromwell-based staff members here today, Luke Jurgensen and Joe Knight. And they've got a bit of a presentation, I think, just to highlight, I guess, some of the work. You've got a written report, but we're going to showcase some of the work that we've done last year. So, here you go.
So, Roger March Makuenwa, and this is, as Owen said, our new colleague Luke. So some of you might have met Ella last year or over the last couple of years, and Luke is pretty fresh on the scene, a couple of months into the role. So it's been great to have a male role model in our primary schools, I think. Yeah, so we will head on through it. So my role is the Community Sport and Active Recreation Advisor. And my objective is to enable more people in Central Otago to move their bodies through active rec and sport. Some highlights for me over the last year would be working with schools and youth trusts to gain funding from our Te Manawa Fund. Had really, I think, high engagement there, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. Working with the Cromwell Youth Trust with their mentoring program, disc golf coaching and a scavenger hunt. We've taken our inflatable set around for rural schools, which was very well received. And yeah, helping set up the Cromwell Youth Club was, yeah, that was exciting too.
I'm Luke. I've taken over from Ella as the PM Play Advisor. So I've got 27 schools. I do service both councils in the area. I think there's 15 in this area. Yeah, and I just facilitate kind of play and PE. So I do on your mark sessions, which is kind of general movement sessions for early childhood and in primary school. I also do the power session. So that is a kind of physical activity leader program aimed at getting the older kids in primary schools engaging with the younger kids at lunchtime. And then I also support the community events. And some of these things, Playbox, it's where we take a play trailer, we've got inflatables, lots of stuff to schools and events. We supported 15 organisations here in the CODC region. We do 9 schools and 950 students participate in that. So that's from years 0 to 8 in this region. On your marks, there was an ECE in Cromwell Primary and the homeschool. Also in Active Rec, we supported a lot of things all over the region. To note, Disc Golf with Disabilities here in Cromwell and the Central Otago Friendship Network, which I think Joe was quite involved in. Also, a lot of Te Manawa applications in that Active Rec area. A few events, Walk and Wheels. We had 1,500 students in this area participate in that. We also help with the COTSA, which is the Central Otago Athletics and cross country. And Joe was pretty involved in Top Life there as well.
That was over 300 kids this year, so.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned PALS before, so that was 9 schools in this area, and 98 students were trained as PAL leaders, and hundreds of kids benefit kind of from their lunchtime activities.
All right, and then, sport development, we were working, as Gillian said, on the Lighthouse project. That's been exciting to see that all coming to fruition now. We had I attended numerous funding clinics at Ranfurly, Cromwell and Alex, Otago Secondary School Sports Association, did a couple of presentations for them, various other things, and supporting our sports clubs and a range of things from delivery to conflict resolution and constitutional advice. We also work in the green prescription space, or not myself and Luke, but we have another employee that does that. What's that?
Yeah, so we've got some health programs as well. They actually sit outside of the grant that we get from CODC, but it's good to get appreciation, I guess, of what we do across the whole region, across our whole breadth. So we do have contracts with Wells South and Te Whatu Ora Southern. So we've got a person based in Cromwell that works out of the medical centres there that delivers the green prescription program and also works as a health coach. We've just recently been able to make that a full-time role. It has been 0.5, it's up to full-time, and they're actually going through their induction. I think it's their first day back in the office, Cromwell office today, so we're going back to say hello afterwards.
Influence and collaborate to drive positive change. Lots of working with other community organisations, sports clubs, council, our funders. We've assisted with, we have an insights person based in Dunedin who's been done some excellent work in the community this year with our clubs, with Central Otago Hockey, Alexandra Ice Skating Club. So various surveys put out to members, which then can help with their strategic direction. What else? We have, the big one probably is, and the exciting one is giving away money. So we've given away just over $2,000 in Sporting Chance. So that's enabling young people who may be from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to buy sports shoes or pay for their subs so they can stay playing sport. The Skeeks Foundation, so that's more higher level athletes, over 21,000 to them. And the exciting one to Manawa, over 155,000. Really exciting project there is the Uru Whenua and Dunstan High School combined to apply for Pūwaka armour boats. So they have been purchased and they're here, just waiting for some storage to be built and, and a coordinator to be employed. So that's something really exciting for the whole community, I think, that one. And really, I think we've had a high level of engagement with both Dunstan High, the 2 area schools and Cromwell College on gaining some funding. So lots of other sort of smaller projects have gone through, getting our girls' gym program up and running at Dunstan High, volleyball program at Roxbury, a blast program at Maniototo Area School. So lots happening in that world.
Charlie, do you know what the funding comes from for those 3 grants?
Yes, there we go.
Yep, so Sporting Chance, we've relied on sponsorship and donations for probably the last 20, 25 years that we've run the Sporting Chance program. This year we've been lucky enough to work with the Otago Community Trust, and they have committed to $30,000 annually. This is across the whole of the OCT area. So that they're willing to contribute $30,000 annually on an annual basis now to support that. So that money's tagged, there's no admin or expenses, it's money in, money out, with going direct to the kids, which is awesome. It saves, we'll still do a little bit on top of that to try and top up fund in terms of donations and sponsorship. Skeggs Foundation runs through, it's a contract we actually have with the Skeggs Foundation. It runs through the mobile cards. So it picks up, one of the details, but petrol subsidised, the money flows back in from that subsidy, and then we grant that money out to athletes across, again, the whole of the Otago region. And that 21,000 represents the funding. That will be CODC and QLDC. That figure should make that. And the last one, to Manawa. We get money from Sport New Zealand. It's probably, I think it's around 700,000 annually. And again, that's money in, money out that we are supposed to give out to the community to activate particularly our tamariki rangatahi and sport, active, rec and play. So that represents the portion that's gone out across CODC in the last year.
And the great thing about the Te Manawa Fund is those projects are all youth-led, so it's what the young people want, what our rangatahi want to see happening in their school and in their community. So I guess we'll finish up by saying a huge thank you to you for funding us and helping us what we do. We couldn't do it without your help. So thank you. Oh,
That's just a professional development.
That's all right.
So happy to take any questions, and obviously we're here to also speak to our grant application for the next year. We're not looking to change too much. We're into our last year of our own strategy. So what you've seen is pretty much what we're going to look to do over the next year as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Are the green prescriptions accessible to other parts of Central Otago besides Cromwell?
Yes.
Yes. Anyone can access.
So that health coaches, with our contract for the health coach, that is in Cromwell Medical and Junction Medical. So for the health coach, it's separate from green prescription. You have to be enrolled within those practices. Alexandra, for example, I think PACT have the contract with health coaches in Alexandra, so they get the service, but they get it through PACT. With green prescription, that's available through any medical practice across the region. So any GP or practitioners can refer, any person in the community can self-refer and get sign off.
Any questions?
Yeah, just wanted to clarify, but the community funding, effectively, that's the money go around. It's not a case of grants from us being used to then be given to someone else.
No, so our grant application for you guys is solely used to support the roles here that we have.
Luke having possibly the most epic job title around as play advisor, and is very well received at our children's primary school. It's probably got a bit harder job. It would be a very difficult job, yes, that's up to you. Okay, and the recommendation on page 21 is that the report be received. If somebody's happy to move that, thank you, Sarah. Seconded, Sally. All those in favour? Aye, against? Carried. Thank you very much for your time. Moving on to page 59. Yes, then. District-wide grant applications. Rebecca. Welcome. And
That's good.
Kia ora and welcome, and thank you. So I've just got a few notes to open up with, if that's okay. We received, this funding round, we received 9 applications in the first round for the district-wide community grants fund. And a request totaling 172,161, and you had 151,000 to distribute. In addition to the 9 applications that staff recommended be considered by council, the Cromwell Community Board had declined a grant from the Central Otago Queenstown Trails Network Trust and have recommended for it to be considered by council. The trust have applied for 10,686.38, and which would bring the whole application for this the council to consider to 182,847. That's the figure in your covering report. I'll just
finish that.
Yeah. Any grants left unallocated from this round will be made available for the second round, and the closing date for that is the 10th of March. I would note that last year you allocated your full pot in the first round, so that is an option available to you. And then I've got some notes on the individual applications before I respond to any questions. The application from the Central Otago Queenstown Trails Network Trust, just to note, I wasn't at the Cromwell Community Board where it was discussed. And so I didn't have the opportunity to explain why it went there instead of here. Staff go through a process of, when grants come in, but trying to figure out its best fit. And so the recommendation for that grant was to Cromwell on the basis that it was a decision between the district-wide pool and the Cromwell Community Board. They're both district-wide and more specific benefits from the application. Given it was for that Cromwell to Queenstown leg of the project and the demands that were on this particular council round, that was why I veered towards the Cromwell Community Board. And I also have not, the assessment of that grant is about supporting the trust in its work rather than the merits or otherwise of the application of fees. So I haven't talked about that at all in my assessment, nor do I think it's proper to do so. That said, the Cromwell Community Board have declined that and referred it to council for its consideration. The recommendations for all the grant amounts in the paper are based on the 22-23 level. So the Life Education Trust, this Central Otago District Arts Trust, the Heritage Trust and Sport Otago have all requested increases in their levels of funding, and it's hard to disagree with that because they've all had increases in costs. However, my assessment has just based, because that total pot hasn't grown, I haven't recommended, but again, that's for you to decide at today's meeting. And we've got the decision table to help with that we can move the figures around to see the effect. New applications have been received from the Lighthouse Initiative, Baking It Better program, Bowel Cancer Aotearoa and the Cancer Society. Staff have recommended that the application from the Cancer Society and Bowel Cancer Aotearoa be declined due to the precedent that it would set for other health-related applications. Staff have considered that a contribution towards Baking It Better be considered. Finally, we staff, as you heard in Gillian's presentation, CODC have been working around the table, and we are a member of the steering group on the Working Title Lighthouse Initiative. We've been told by the comms people stop calling it Lighthouse, but it's very hard to call something with no name. The no name. It's been, as Gillian described, it's been on the go for some time. Volunteer South has been appointed as the backbone entity so that they are the front person for grants. They will be the employer of the person that's engaged to run it. So far it's been successful in receiving $92,500 towards the project. A large chunk of that was from the Central Lakes Trust, and it really does aim to build the capacity and capability across the community sector throughout the district. And it has created working relationships between both councils and all those groups that are involved in that project. And it will enhance, I suspect will only go from strength to strength, and I've recommended that $5,000 go towards that project. So that's my notes, and happy to answer any questions.
I just wonder if there's somebody who was at the Cromwell Community Board meeting could just give an update on any additional information on why that,
I can do that.
the discussion that was held,
Yeah.
given that not all of us were part of it.
Probably it was partially my doing because that had come to the Cromwell board and my sense was that that trail, when it comes from Gibbston to Cromwell, will feed into Cromwell to Clyde, which will feed into Clyde to Roxburgh, which will feed into the rail trail. And I just didn't see why. I'm not advocating whether us paying for it's right or wrong, but I advocated that I didn't think it was Cromwell's thing alone. The trails support the whole of Central Otago, and the one from Queenstown is going to be a main artery. So that's why I felt that it should come here. It wasn't just Cromwell's knitting, which the board readily agreed to.
Right.
There was another aspect to that though. At the end of the day, if you go and look at the money we spend on trails, it's district funding.
Yes.
So the logic says, if you're funding the maintenance trails through a district rate, district funding, as opposed to what used to be, because Cromwell did pay for all those tracks and trails, but that changed with the council's act. So that was also part of the logic as well.
And,
yes, can I just clarify, there's 10.6 in there this time. At the Cromwell Community Board, they came to ask for 7 something because they were prepared to put in 3.
So
we're back up to
my
10.
my recommendation would still be at the 7686.
Right.
And just to clarify, so in the body of the application from the Trails Trust, you've said that they would be prepared to.
So that's still the same, is the 3,000 still?
Be unchanged.
Okay.
Yeah, all the recommended figures are actually in the attachments. And they're not in the main report.
Okay.
No,
that,
And there's
Yeah, they're
Yeah, that's
different
not there,
now.
so-
I'm not sure if they're
Yeah.
taken out.
I went through,
sorry.
I went through the attachments to get the recommended figures and then now you've got them, which is quite handy. And guess what? Our numbers agree. Our numbers agree.
I forgot that I meant to include this with the pay, with your attachment, so I must write myself.
I wasn't sure if they changed their mind and redacted the 3,000 off.
So what's the process now? We go through them
Well,
one
I
by
guess
one.
that- would you like to go through them one by one? Would anybody like to discuss any of those particular items? I think Sarah, you had some comments around the bottom lines.
Well, why don't we agree on the ones that are not recommended in the first place? So that, because that you can consider them for the logic that Becca's given.
Yeah.
Since there are implications as precedent, national organisations, the answer is no. And if we're happy with that, then that makes that part easy.
Discount those and then review that.
Yeah, but happy with that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right, okay, Life Education Trust. They've requested $4,000, staff recommendation is $3,000. Does anybody want to discuss that further?
It seems like a really tiny amount to ask for. They're telling us they're doing more, they've doubled it. What they're sending out there. Why, is there a background to why it's so low? You can see obviously what they're telling us.
That's what they applied from previous years. This year they've applied for that increase.
And is that a historical thing that they've applied for it because that's what they get in? Like, are we setting precedent there that they kind of apply for what they know they'll get? Or
I
done? Is it like, there's quite a disparity between some of the figures, the things that are of no less significance or importance necessarily, but I feel like some of them are historical that they've always got that amount. So we're kind of ring fencing 50k here for arts because it's been there for so long. It's just,
Rob's getting funding everywhere, so.
but well, are they? I guess is something like, is that covered? Is that significant enough that it will do what we're aiming to do for their program? They're happy with that.
The key thing about these is that they've given the total cost of the project. Instead, if you provide this much, we can balance out, our box. The dilemma we got now, I think, is a bigger picture. One saying they've got an increase in cost, increase in budget, and they're looking for a bigger contribution than us. And we're pretty well sticking with what we've done, which is what Rebecca said for the reason she says she's done it. And I think we need to have a conversation about saying, well, if you're going to support them, is there any point in not providing the increased level of support so they can do what they're going to do and achieve the outcomes that we're agreeing to?
Yeah.
Or not, because that's, you can say, well, I'll give you X number of dollars, but if that's not enough, then
But it's not to do what they need to do.
They can't do what they need to do.
Yeah, and I guess on that, recognising that the total recommended amount of just shy of 148,000 out of 151,000, are we interested in running a second grants round or two?
Might as well spend it all today.
Yeah.
It's just wasting staff time otherwise.
Yeah.
And can I take it one step further, Tamer? This is 2 years in a row we've done that, so let's be honest with ourselves and have one funding round a year.
Yeah.
So that people don't think, oh, I'll go for the second one.
With the boards, there will always be second round.
Yeah,
of
yes.
boards.
But for here,
And it depends on the conversation through the long-term plan process.
well, that's true. So, okay, that's a long-term plan conversation, but something to keep in mind that.
Yeah.
Especially around the staff time and things
Yeah.
involved in running the process, if we can streamline that to one, then.
Can I just add, sorry, to Sarah's point as well, obviously part of the long-term plan process conversation is around some inflationary adjustment to these grants as well, so that will help adjust and address your concern in the future.
So I just wonder if one of the issues we need to think about is saying that look, those ones that have had the money before, and if they still are important to us, then you might want to think about whether you bring any new ones in to keep doing what you've always done, or you actually say, well, if we're going to bring some new ones in, who am I going to take out? Who can afford to have a lesser funding? Because I just did a quick thing is if you just said, well, we'll support what we've always supported, I'm not trying to say they should always be there, but you don't take the new ones then and give them all what they ask for. And if you agree that that's what they're trying to deliver, then you're looking at a total cost of 153.5. It's 2.5K more than the budget, which to me says, yeah, okay. But so those are sort of questions that we have to weigh up in my mind.
You do have a contestable grants round, and so that's the only point I've made.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So
And I just further to what Neil just said, I did look at the Baking It Better, and I'm sure they do great work, but then when, the District Arts Trust are needing 10K more just for their running costs, wouldn't it be better to help them out deliver the strategy for the arts strategy for Central Otago and put more money into that than potentially giving a new, I mean, baking's great, but strategy is quite a key thing for the district. So that was mine.
So how do we go through them?
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on Neil's comment, because I get that, but the counter to that is that if we continually fund the ones we've always funded and don't look at new ones, there's no impetus on the ones we've always funded to get on their own 2 feet to an extent. And I take your point on the baking, but I look at that Volunteer South, the Lighthouse Initiative, and I go to so many AGMs, and there are times when I just cringe at the lack of training. Good people trying to do the right thing, but I'm hugely supportive of that one because I see it just about weekly where, oh dear, this isn't best practice. So it's not easy.
But also I think the Lighthouse Initiative, and I've been thinking quite a bit about that, they potentially could potentially save money on some of these other grants going forward because they could potentially have some savings by bringing everything together. So I think that one could potentially help us in the future.
How do we address this?
How do we work this out, Amy?
Yes, well, we're going to go through it starting at the top. And I think that's the easiest way, recognising that there seems to be an appetite to give away the full 151 today.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to see what the table thinks about the Making It Better program? So,
yeah,
because then it will just give you a feel, I think, for that, like maybe perhaps the new ones first, because then that will give you a feel for what you have made.
Put Central Queensland Trail Network, put 0 beside that for start would help.
let's start with the baking.
we know where you want to go.
Something bubbling.
I'd like to go through them one by one. I think that's easy. I think it's yeah. We'll do the whole lot, yeah. So Life Education Trust, that's the first one. We'll cover that off. That's the smallest. Is there an appetite to increase that to the $4,000 that they ask?
I would be keen, but I've seen them. They're doing great work. They're supporting our schools. There's an education crisis. If there's anything that we need to be looking at, it's a really small amount for what they're doing.
Okay.
At this stage, support.
Can you pop that up 4,000, please, Lau? And then looking at the next one is the Baking It Better program, which if you want to have a look on their application, it's page 183. Does anybody have any comments around that at this time?
I thought it was a very nice thing that they're doing, but I just don't know if that's, it falls in, all of these are wants, but it falls in more into a want category than a need category. And if we were to be giving money in that space, I'd probably be more inclined, not that I'm suggesting that, but to give it straight to the food bank where the more direct needs can be assessed as opposed to people getting some food and turning it into cakes and all around. I think it's lovely.
And there are quite a lot of programs like that around where.
Or is that one that go to individual community boards for smaller grants for specific towns and areas? Is that one that we turn around the other way and say it's not actually district, it's local that would be possibly?
Yeah, I'll take it
Is
out.
there anything else to take it out? Does anybody feel strongly that they want it to remain in at this point? No. Okay, thank you. Yeah. The next new one.
I'm thinking about it.
Stop that.
Volunteer South, the unnamed initiative.
Yeah.
AKA like, that is on page. That's nice one.
I think the other thing with this one, Tanya, if I may, is there's an awful lot of other organisations supporting it who are highly credible, highly organised, and will have done the due diligence. And if they think it's a good idea, we should be doing our little bit. To it as well.
Yeah, now it's just a small portion.
I just hope we're listening to that a lot of the money's from Central Lakes Trust and not feel that it's not district wide, and a percentage of that money, if it comes out of us, goes our way as well.
Help make sure that happens. But
It's just a feeling you get.
So we've, so we are around the table there and CLT acknowledged their boundary line, however, know that this needs to be all of our district, and so.
We can
we've got a win-win. That's right, there's a win-win there.
Yeah, as long as,
We're happy to let it 5,000.
Well, one of the things to also consider is that you in this year, are you also then saying what happens next year?
We might cut.
That's
that.
Really? That'd be a first.
I know, we might.
we might.
It's important to, in all of these organisations do understand that just because you've received it 1 year is not a guarantee that you're going to get the same or more or less amount.
Have a look at their budget on page 127 and look at year 2. And we'll find that CODC are in their year 2 budget plan and they've got $10,000.
Yep, and they can ask for it and they may or may not receive it.
But I just think you need to be mindful that if you're going to drop it next year, whether you like it or not, you've created expectations that you may be better off not to create in the first place.
And you can be, Rebecca, that any letters that go back also reiterate that.
They are, I mean, they're made up of funding organisations and that don't have multi-year funding agreements. So I would say like QLDC's contribution is looking towards $30,000 to $40,000. So the $5,000 that's been requested from Central Otago is.
Right, $5,000 there. The next new one, Central Otago putting down funding with trust.
Got it.
You want to say in 50 words or less, why?
Oh, at the end of the day, Transit New Zealand have a bit of funding for trails and walkways and bits and pieces like that. Yes, it does. There's a lot of money of our own ratepayer base goes into trails as it is. It's actually for administration, isn't it? Really, it's a peer review. It's not actually to put a structure over it or a planning or whatever. It's a peer review on a geotechnical support. I mean, it's not a trust thing. It should be a maintenance thing or a capital project. So no, not for this.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on this application because I am involved with the trust, so Tim will leave any discussion on the trail.
Sally, she's
Sally, sorry.
No, just a little bit.
Any questions?
I think the key thing to me is the council is actively involved in trails in terms of maintenance, O&M costs. And I'm not sure if we actually contributed to the capital cost of the Dunstan Trail. That's effectively what this is. It's a capital cost towards a new trail. And that's the only reason I'm going, no, I'm not convinced that we're in for that. This community and this council will be in for later on, and we already are with funding the O&M side of things. So that will be a first under the new structure of the bigger trails being built. So at this stage, I'd be happy to see it left out and then see where we end up.
Yes. Is there another way of assisting the trail trust by in kind? Assisting with resource consent fees and
That's what it says.
Yeah, Lee's not even looking
Well, it's not gonna go ahead whether we give the $10,000 or not. It's gonna go ahead. It's not gonna jeopardise, like some of these others will jeopardise their plan and projects going forward. It's not gonna stop the trial from working. At the end of the day, it's a geotech peer review offset fees and charges. Trial's still going on, so it won't affect it.
So leave it out for now, is that the general feeling?
Can we go with the central one, like the Central Otago Health first?
Or you leave that one in or out.
Just gonna come back to it, when you know what else is.
So leave it out for now?
Yeah.
The,
Neil?
Well, I've said my bit.
I see it both ways, so I'm kind of ambivalent at the
I
moment.
see a little bit.
I think the trials do great things.
Yeah.
But they've got budgets, they've got other inputs, and probably could have been sold a little bit better to the board as well. Pause it, put it at 0 for now and see where it leaves us.
Okay, sounds good. Hang on.
The Central Otago Health Incorporated, Lynn, did you want to comment on that?
Oh, which was totally essential for rural health is to, support the Health Incorporated, and I'm totally in favour of the whole amount.
Yeah.
I don't even think it should be on a contestable grant. We set the bloody thing up, didn't we?
Same about the Heritage Trust.
I haven't got to that one yet.
Yeah, I'm in favour of that.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Okay, so Wayne, do you want to put in the recommended amounts for the others first, the 40,000 and 40,000 and 42,555, and see where we're at?
Is one approach for considering increases for these three, heritage, sport and district arts, is one idea to do a percentage for all.
Oh, yeah.
CPI adjusted for all.
So say 10% increase for each grant.
Mm.
And so for, or 20% or whatever the figure is. So for Central Otago District Arts, that would be, 20% would be 8. 20%, oh, now my mess is going
But I think you might need to go closer to 10%.
Yeah, I wonder.
So sorry, 10% is 4,000.
So 44.
So it would take it to 44. Central Otago Heritage Trust would take it from,
Show you what they want.
yeah, 40 to 44, and Sport Otago 42 to plus another
46.
Yeah, about 46.
555.
That's just one.
Say 46.
It's a good theory.
It's a good, that's
Look
better.
at the number it comes up to.
Well, it's up to you.
151, 111.
Take $111 off.
I don't.
Lollipops, sport target. If we made it CPI adjusted instead of 10%, you get your budget.
So yeah, 46, 444.
Yeah.
Or 443 or whatever it becomes.
Why not?
Very good, well done. So,
That's perfect.
I'll move that report.
Did you like those individually? Wayne?
No.
I think that's really good.
We will get some in. So now if we could just, Wayne will have a draft resolution.
Yep.
And can we just really pay, can I request that we just pay mind to how we, word the declines, because that's important when we communicate back to the applicants. So Wayne, here's something we prepared earlier.
Yeah.
Did you do that before you heard our discussion?
Wayne doesn't know that we'll have to do some adjustments.
Yeah, just.
Good, I'm not that good.
That's who's got.
So we've got decline due to the president, decline due to the president allocates 4,000. Declines the application. Wayne, do we want to say the D?
Yeah.
Due to demand on the funds, would that be a fair? This is good, the good baking theatre.
I think that would apply to everybody.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just declined. The discussion's available online if they wish to see what discussion happened around the table, but I don't think the minutes need to reflect what the recommendations.
That's also a precedent thing to a degree, isn't it? If you open it to one, then a lot of similar.
And I think it's clear from that declines for the 2023-24 funding round. There is certainly nothing preventing any of these organisations from applying again.
Just perhaps with the first two of being national health services related applications, because to a degree, the Central Otago Health Inc. is health related. And for me, it's when a national organisation's come that's nationally funded, that's not our mission, is my thinking behind that, if that works for us.
Have you got that, Wayne?
So just the first two and B before health, we've got other national health services related applications.
Right. Just and what that's so that's A, B, C, D, and then
No, just the next one down,
Yeah.
Cancer Society, and then that's, I think, fine after that.
Lovely. Yeah, okay, cool.
And so then allocates to 5,000, allocates for.
Is that allocates 4,000, is that supposed to be C there?
Yeah, that's, this one's supposed to be C, I was in problems with the letters. But that's supposed to be C, and this one is D.
Oh, yeah.
So that's, for the Life Education Trust.
Gotcha. But in that one's been silly, which you can.
Yes, yes.
Is the Sport Otago amount correct, Wayne? I think that needs to.
That's
Oh,
46.
46,444, sorry, yeah. With that. Yeah.
Can I just, sorry, just.
He likes it,
Yeah, I know, but just, I just think having 7,556 and surely 6,444 is just 46.5, 7.5 round. Is it just me?
You're a thinking man, Neil, but can't get it away from it.
I know that. Well,
The 7556 can be the same, but that can happen.
that's right, it adds up, that's fine, just.
You don't carry over.
Yeah.
You're always thinking, is there, Neil?
Do we need to have a letter in the bottom to advise that there will be no second round for 2023-24?
No.
Well, there's none left.
You don't.
Oh, yes, and I just put in that resolution, what's up there is I, but will be a different letter. Except some recommendation from the Cromwell Community Board to consider the application from, because that was a recommendation for you to do that, so you
Except the recommendation.
and then decline it.
Yeah. I think we would need to say there'll be no second round formally. I mean, it's the effect of this, but technically, wouldn't we need something just to say?
Yeah, put it on it.
As a consequence, there'll be no second round.
What?
As a consequence of the budget being spent, there will be no second round.
As a consequence, as a result of that,
Will be.
positive aspect of our board,
Will be now.
all the money spent.
We get a car, we get a car.
Council, district wide.
Good, good, well done, Wayne.
Thank you, gentlemen. Right. So on the basis that I think that should be, the recommendation is A to N. If the others have
Yeah.
A to N.
I'll move those recommendations.
Stu Steppers moves, Sarah Steppers second that, all those in favour?
Okay.
Against? Carries. Thank you very much for your time and efforts on that one. Moving to page 64 of your agenda, item 33.9.4, the Cromwell Aerodrome with Gareth and Aaron. Welcome.
Okay, so I'll take the report as read. So what I'm basically asking for, is for council to consider approval unbudgeted expenditure of $30,000 to create a gravel vehicle access way for hangar sites at Cromwell Aerodrome. There are now 23 hangar lease sites at the aerodrome and no further sites available. We've got a full house. 14 hangars have been built and the remaining 9 hangars will be completed within the next 12 to 24 months. originally when we when the council approved the increased number of hangars, we intended to do a access track at the back of the hangars, and that was to be gravelled at a later stage when all the hangar leases are in place. But we've had a couple of, we've had quite a few complaints over the last 2 years, particularly in the winters, that track has become inaccessible at times, and particularly with the increased construction vehicles with all the hangars being built. So originally that the cost of that track to gravel it was going to be put in the LTP in the 1 and 2, but because of all the complaints and the deterioration of the track, the proposal is that we spend that money now and it can go ahead in October. We've got probably, I think it's 4 or 5 hangar rentals that are unbudgeted. So that will be able to help fund that $30,000 through partly a loan and partly through the direct.
Oh, thank you very much. Is there any questions for Gareth and Tara? No, right.
Does that track go all the way, the full extent to the end?
Yes, it's 650 metres, so it basically goes from one end to the other.
Right, kind of number 21.
Yeah.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Well, so recommendations: receives a report and accepts the level of significance, approves unbudgeted expenditure of $30,000 to create a gravel vehicle access way for hangar sites at the Cromwell Aerodrome to be funded from the Cromwell Aerodrome hangar site rental income, and authorises the chief executive to do all that is necessary to give effect to the resolution. Neil's happy to move that and due to second it. Any other discussion? No. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Hopefully we will have some happy people because that trip is looking rubbish.
Runway too.
Right, moving to page 71. Item 23.9.5, application for Minister of Conservation's consent to the granting of easements over recreation reserve with Gareth and Linda. Welcome.
Morning. So I'll also take my report as being read and just give you a quick recap on it. What I'm here for today is to ask you to grant some easements in gross to permit the conveyance of sewage and sewerage over lots 25 and 31 out in Clyde as part of the construction of the Clyde reticulation system, wastewater reticulation system. Some of that infrastructure was constructed just past the end of Fraser Street in the recreation reserve there. The reason that it was constructed in there is because it's at the top of a hill, so it assists with the flow and how all of that engineering factors associated with the reticulation system work. So some of the infrastructure is for the main and the other easement is for the main that is located in number 13 Fraser Street, and the other is to cater for the lengths of the laterals which go to what is private property, even though some of that adjacent property is owned by council. So it will permit its ongoing care, maintenance and future replacement.
Thank you. Any questions for Linda or Gareth? No? Right, recommendations A and B on page 71, that we receive the report and grant the Minister of Conservation's consent. Thanks, Stu and Sally. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks.
Thank you. And now I will hand over to Neil. 25 minutes ahead of schedule, no pressure.
How about Cheryl?
Cheryl, sorry. Cheryl.
We are on page 77, number 23.9.6, green fueling water incident.
Start.
Where is Julie?
Oh, right.
Julie?
Yeah.
We can start with that one. Well, we've given up to time today too, Tim.
That's not been me.
No, dear, not. So it's new chairs, isn't it?
What happens when you got more?
Oh, you girls.
To be fair, the mayor did hand over with 3 minutes ahead of schedule.
3 minutes, okay. Thank you.
Well,
It
that
was
kicks time,
Jack's-
Neil kicks time.
That's a song.
An old school teacher,
Carol's got
he's watching everything.
So, if he's not hearing, no, yeah.
This is anyway.
Is there anything else you want to do for the next 2 minutes?
No, because, you know, relax.
Right?
No.
I've got to go to the dentist, I don't have any dentist, doesn't it? It's stuck in the water.
Things that happen, something like that.
I'm town. Up that way.
There we go.
Thank you, Julie. Spider. You have the floor.
So we're talking about the compliance report.
No, Grenfell water incident, item number 23.9.6.
I'll take the report as read. So the report is reasonably comprehensive and it outlines how the Grenfell supply is set up in the events that transpired starting around the 26th of January through to the 16th of February, and the actions that have been identified to address the shortcomings. So there were a number of failings by both council's contractor and by council that we can learn from and put steps in place to ensure it doesn't happen again. There's been changes within both the contractor and council delivery teams since April, and these are resulting in a significant change in culture. The nature of water delivery within Central Otago is that the water sources used are typically vulnerable to climatic events, and it's inevitable that we will continue to have challenges with the source water that we use. So, and it is the response to these situations that makes a difference to the outcome that's experienced by the community. So, you know, we kind of acknowledge that in this case, our response could have avoided the situation that occurred. There are still further process improvements that need to be put in place to ensure events like this do not result in similar outcomes in the future. These are outlined in the report, and we are working through those now. One of the actions is the level of involvement that council actually takes in responding to an event on the network which has the potential to lead to disruption to the minimum level of service. In this event, council's water team took a passive role while the contractor advised and led the work that was required to be undertaken. So council's water team is now taking a more active role, and we necessarily are directing the required response, and that happened at the weekend with the Naseby River event, where we were actively involved in making the decisions about what needed to happen to ensure that that community stayed off water notice. Another critical element is the protocols that are relating to communication between members of the public, stakeholders, the contractor and council. And so while it's sometimes necessary for the contractor to communicate directly with the stakeholders and the public, council also needs to be in the loop on those discussions. And we have some more work required to improve that. We also need to ensure that the criticality of a situation is being escalated within the council. And I'm actually really confident that this issue has already been addressed through the change in culture that's been happening within the team. So it's entirely possible that there could be another dry summer this summer, and we are committed to ensuring that all of the actions that have been identified are in place by Christmas. So separately to this, we're also have been doing a lot of work on the investigation stage for upgrades to all of the Manitoba water supplies, and that's to improve their resilience and compliance with the New Zealand drinking water standards. So that work is now progressing, and it's getting to a point where we are going to be able to include the investment program that's required to progress that in the implementation of the long-term plan.
Thank you. So I think it's good to have a clear, comprehensive understanding of the sequence of events and the subsequent actions related to the event. And it's also good to know that new procedures are being put in place so that not just from council, but also from Fulton Hogan to mitigate the possibility of this happening again. So with that said, are there any questions?
Okay. At the time, our staff and our elected members made it quite clear to staff, and we always got the feeling we were being brushed off. Whether we were at your level, I don't know. But when you have farmers taking a look at that and social media putting those pictures that we're now seeing now, and it was quite laughable, I guess, in the context. It was just the feeling of not being listened to. Now, whether that was a contractor or our staff, and I know there's operational where we become involved around here, and it's very hard doing the job, but I'm sure it won't happen again. But it did actually, there's good learnings in that we are vulnerable to weather change, we are vulnerable to things happening. And I know it won't happen to the same degree because people are on edge. And I'm sure that we make the right decisions at this level, and at management level or top end, you know, it's just sometimes not getting that down.
So I can assure you it wasn't brushed off at my level. There wasn't actually any conversation with me from any elected member or member of the public around this event.
But it was happening to staff in the region.
I think it might have been to the contractors' staff because we've actually gone back to check through. Here, there's one staff member who doesn't work here anymore, and we haven't been able to go through their comms, but we've actually done searches through our comms, our email accounts for the staff that are here to get the outline of events that occurred. So, yeah, like we would certainly the staff here, we've met with the Manitoba Community Board Chair and we'll talk through what happened, and that was quite eye-opening for us because we weren't aware that some of those conversations had been occurring. So that is part of why we want to get some protocols in place to make sure that those lines of discussion are happening all the time through the summer, so that we're not getting to the point where we're in a situation before people are responding to it. We should be well ahead of knowing that these things are coming up and we're ahead of it, not behind it.
Thanks, Sean. So on page 89, we've got the actions to be taken, which revolve around the Ranford scheme, and that's appropriate. But when I see things such as the water safety plan didn't make it obvious to people they can get up through the forest even when it's closed, or that there was what turned out to be the reason was probably the most obvious one. What surety can you give us that the lessons in the broader sense that have been taken from this are being implemented to the rest of our schemes, and that it's not just restricted to what we've learned from Ranford?
We have got in place now a review program on the water safety plans. So all of the water safety plans had to be redone and submitted by the 15th of November last year. So that had enormous workload pressures in terms of getting those rewritten and updated, because we had 9 suppliers at that point that had plans done. So we did what was required to get those in under some pressure, and the contractors and the operational staff, there was a whole group of people that were involved in those, and they were prepared by a consultant for us. So we're now going back with our staff and updating them with more accurate information and questioning some of the info that came through. But the reality is that the staff who were involved in developing the water safety plan believed that they couldn't get through the forest in dry conditions. Now we know that we've had a workshop with our contractor and with our staff where we've talked about where community water supplies sit in the priority of things, and delivering water to a community is a critical service. It's, if you need to get access, you need to get access, and if you have to call on a helicopter if it's that bad, you call on a helicopter to get in there to get access. You don't. You have to question some of those things, but so it's also part of that critical incident response where we're saying these things need to escalate up the chain, because sometimes a person who's not so involved looks at it more critically and says, hang on a second, this just doesn't sound right. And that didn't happen in this situation. And I think that's a key learning.
Did we have any other questions? And sorry, you're going to say something new?
No, I won't.
No.
I'll move the recommendation.
So we're talking A, B, C and D. Receives the report, accepts the level of significance, agrees to the actions outlined in this report, directs the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report on progress in delivering these actions to the 13th December Council meeting, And finally, agrees to progress the business case work to guide investment in water treatment upgrades for the Maniatoto water supplies to meet the New Zealand drinking water standards compliance and improve resilience. So moved by Stu, do I have a second? This first, Tamer. Is that all in favour? Against? Okay. Thank you. So Julie, don't move. So we're on page 93. And that is the item number 2, 3.9.7, and that is the wastewater abatement notice.
So this is a standing monthly report that we do. So changes that have happened in the last month is that since the report was written, we've actually had feedback from the Regional Council on our applications for extensions to some of the dates for achieving all of the actions required. So Cromwell and Roxburgh have both been granted extensions out till the 31st of August 2024, and I'll talk about those a little bit more soon. In terms of Alexandra, that business case is progressing well on that, and we will have it council in November. We had hoped to have it up in September, but there was a bit more information that was needed to complete the information and ready for you to have a look at it and make a decision about the way forward there. But I would say that at the moment the Alexandra plant is compliant. It's always on a bit of a knife edge because it is an old plant, and so if we do get a breakdown that can turn quite quickly, but at the moment the operations are being done really well and it's operating well. So with Cromwell, in terms of the application date for the extension, we do have the ability to progress the detailed design for the nitrogen removal this financial year by using the development contribution income that's coming in. So development contributions for Cromwell are tracking way above our budgets. We've already received the budget for the year and already this year what we were anticipating, which there's good and bad with that. It improves our cash flow for getting things done, but it also means that growth is happening faster than what we had planned for it. So I think it's entirely appropriate that we be coming back to council with a procurement plan. So at the moment, because of doing an outline review, outline design, what would be needed to get the nitrogen removal plant in place, and we'll bring that back to council before Christmas with a procurement plan around it that will suggest that we get into detailed design in the new year. That would enable us to go to tender around the start of next financial year. So we can hold the timeline forward, but we won't be able to meet the August 31st deadline for having the plant built. We've had conversations with ORC staff around that, and they said that's okay, so long as we're demonstrating that good progress is being made and getting the plant constructed and in place. And with Roxburgh, we have a tender, that tender documents for sludge removal are being reviewed right now, and that's going to be up for tender with the tenders closing later in October. We're hoping that sludge removal and then the installation of an aerator and the work that's already been done there will be enough to get us back within the nitrogen limits. It's only marginally above the nitrogen limits through the colder months of winter. This isn't a constant thing that's happening at Roxburgh. It's a winter related because it gets so cold down there. We won't unfortunately know if that's been successful until we get through another winter. But the work that we are intending to do in the meantime will all be in place for this winter. So it's possible that we could be compliant by August, but we won't know until August if that's the case. Yeah. And so I think then the other thing, we are making good. There's a lot of investigation work happening around Ranfurly and Naseby and testing being undertaken to understand the effectiveness of each of the different stages of the treatment process to understand what changes, if any, need to be done there. Most work's being programmed through our renewals program and the long-term plan. We do need to still, however, do some work around inflow and infiltration, and that's where stormwater ends up in the wastewater network. It's becoming more pressing, not just from a compliance perspective, but also because that stormwater is taking up capacity that we need for growth, particularly in Alexandra and work. So we will be having a bit of a focus on it in the next few months. And our wastewater pipe renewals are out for tender now, and they close on the 19th of October. And we have focused the pipe renewal program in Ranfurly in an effort to try to address some of that stormwater infiltration that's coming in through, because it's not all for private property, some of it will be coming in through the existing property.
Just on that, non-compliant stormwater connections, do we have that capacity and enforcement now to start those initial conversations and carry on, or when do we think that will be in place?
Look, I've had to talk with Lee and Noise, but it's going to be an ongoing project. We can write with Ranfurly, we'll write the letters to the property owners, but it's that chase up process that happens that gets more challenging. But there is a number of things we can do around infiltration in our own network as well. We'll keep progressing.
And I guess even the ability to send those letters and start the conversation would be helpful.
Yeah.
But if I may add on to that, we sent those letters from Cromwell and Alexandra a couple of 3 years ago.
But some people have.
Some people
got their own
have. But others who haven't, they put up the arse.
Look, I think this is something that you just can't do once. It's we'll have to do more testing. It's going to be an ongoing.
Sorry, I'm struggling to understand, because we did the smoke testing in Cromwell and Alex. We identified properties that had a problem. Some of them have fixed it, and we should have evidence of that. So those that haven't, why are they not getting a letter saying do it, or you're going to be, we must have a fine provision in place or something?
No, I think, Chair, this is a peculiarity of this one.
If I can, Mr. Chair, we have done all of that.
Right.
And there comes a point whereby we can't actually issue infringements, and so that's in relation to like a notice to fix as well. So if person A has caused the issue, for argument's sake, of doing cross connection, and then sells the property to person B, we can't issue the notice to fix to person B. The law doesn't allow us to do that.
So we put a bylaw in, we can't do it.
Correct. And so the other part of that is in relation to the fact of actually doing the works. And so when we get to this point whereby you said that you're going to do the works, we don't actually do the works.
Yeah.
Is then the only mechanism that we have, and I stand to be corrected for this, is doing the works to the defaults. And then that's an additional cost on council to do those works and trying to recover the money as well.
Yeah, so we can set somebody to do the work and then send them the bill, and when they don't pay.
And then that one becomes a charge to the land.
Wow.
And so there's a longer period of time of recovering those monies, but then we need to fund that cost until we get.
You can see what becomes the rigmarole. That's standing lack in the law, isn't it? We're enforced with making sure our stormwater is as good as it can be, but we're not given the tools by central government to do it.
Correct, and that goes back to the Local Government Act 1974.
No, that explains it. Okay, that's very helpful explanation. Thank you.
The new water legislation that's been put in place for the new water entities does address it.
Yeah, okay.
But that'll only become effective if there's a new water entity.
Yeah. Speaking of smoke.
So we got any further
Can we
questions?
put a sign outside all those properties that have not got the right setup? I'll go and put them out. Quite happy to do it.
If I may, Chair, just a quick question. How many houses did we do the smoke test in Cromwell? I mean, is it a third of Cromwell's been done? All of Cromwell's been done?
I'm not exactly sure. It was 2017 that the smoke testing got done, so I don't actually know, Peter, how much of it got done. But it was the older parts of the township that it was done. Yeah.
A lot of that sort of changed hands now anyway.
Yeah.
So current owners wouldn't necessarily know it was done.
And look, I'm reluctant to go and do more smoke testing because it doesn't, it's not necessarily good value for money.
We can't do anything about it. We're relying on the goodwill of people who actually care for the environment to do something about it, and are in a financial position to do it. So no, Martin said it costs
That's a lot of money.
quite a bit of money. Sorry, through the cheap.
That's one. Okay, so do we have any further questions? No? Can I ask for someone to move that we receive this report?
Yeah.
Okay. Sally, secondly, and all those in favour? Against? Can we move on to page number 109? Now that's item number 23.9.8. Newsnet Cupid? Yes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'll take the report as read. So this is around the Otago Regional Waste Assessment that's been undertaken and the recommendations that follow that. So the Waste Minimisation Act requires us as a territorial authority to adopt a waste management and minimisation plan. And that sets out, and the Act sets out what the plan must provide. It's a mandatory requirement to have that WMMP reviewed no later than 6 years after the date it was last reviewed. That was coming up 6 years ago. So as a collaboration piece, we have worked with the 4 other Otago councils and undertaken a joint waste assessment. And that's basically identifying if there's been any changes, both across the board from central government in our own district, and looking at whether it's appropriate to amend or revoke and rewrite our waste management and minimisation plan. So ultimately the output of that and the overall conclusion from that review was that while the waste management and minimisation plans varied widely in strategic direction across the region, our action plans and targets were also slightly different, that there is significant central government work and significant changes over the last 5 years, and the recent release of the New Zealand Waste Strategy led to the conclusion that all of our plans should be revoked and replaced by new plans. So the recommendation today is to note the 2023 Otago Regional Waste Assessment is now complete as per section 51 of the Waste Minimisation Act 2008, and resolves to proceed with developing a new Central Otago Waste Management and Minimisation Plan, and that will come back through council and for consultation through the LTP process as well. And that will chair for any questions.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions?
Change the name, that's hard to say.
WMP, it's nice and easy.
Yeah. Nothing? Okay. So can I have a mover for A, B, and C, please? And the seconder? Sally and Sarah? And, okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Thank you very much, QB. Stay there. We are talking about 23.9.9, Bendigo Loop Road dust suppression, page 356 on the agenda. Welcome, guys. Morning.
So Bendigo Loop dust suppression, we've had an approach by a group of landowners on Bendigo Loop regarding funding a long section, 3 kilometre section of dust suppression seal on Bendigo Loop Road. They have had ongoing issues both with the environmental aspect of the dust going across vineyards, but more importantly, really struggling to retain staff working in those vineyards because of that dust problem. Look, 2 recommendations. Obviously council received an important exceptional level of significance, but also recommending that approval of the construction of that dust suppression seal on the 3 kilometre section of Bendigo Loop Road, privately funded by the landowner. So I do apologise for the increased dependency with the roading policy, but he's got that now. It is in contradiction with the current policy and its interpretation and wording around the fact that we do generally fund 100 metre sections for residential properties for eco sealing for dust suppression. So this isn't exactly in line with our dust suppression policy. However, there is a mechanism in there to have a discussion like we are today with council around accepting a longer, or accept privately funded longer lengths, on assessment. I think this is an appropriate situation for council to consider, allowing this to go ahead. We've completed some preliminary costings around long-term maintenance renewal of that eco seal. And you could say that eco seal was probably slightly cheaper to maintain over its life, but obviously you've got to renew it even that 8 to 10 year life as well too. The big benefits are obviously level of service, one for ongoing regular maintenance, reducing customer complaints around both the dusting and corrugations on the road. And then obviously being made aware by those horticultural businesses along that road, the effect it is actually having on their employees from a health and safety perspective. So, yeah. Any questions?
I did, and it's more for my own understanding. At page 357, it says the cost of the new EcoStar will, over the 10 years, will offset by the cost savings and grading. But it won't be totally offset, will it? Because that's 200,000 to grade 3 kilometres of road.
Yeah.
The grade is going to have to go there anyway, so it's just that 3 kilometres, right? Because it's going to have to be the other side.
So, give or take, it's about 6K section of road.
Yeah.
So, and the grade is in the in that area anyway, because there's other gravel roads around that section. But there is a cost to grading that first 3 kilometres.
Yeah.
And that cost there, if you pluck that out and put it over 10 years, is the same as us renewing that eco seal.
So how much does it cost a kilometre to grade?
It's expensive.
Yeah, there's
grading is, so there is a tipping point where sealing does become a good option, but and the caveat of that is around Waka Kotahi subsidy for seal extensions and different things like that. And in this instance, we did look at the option of what would a top up from council look like to actually seal that road as opposed to a dust suppression seal. But the top up would be very unlikely to attract Waka Kotahi funding. Questions would probably, although it would be the last 30 years, and probably be a similar long run cost, council will be bearing that top up 100%, which then doesn't make it.
That indicates a pretty serious flaw in Waka Kotahi's funding model, doesn't it? Actually, they have a long-term focus. They don't seem to be better to take.
Vehicles per day, and overall, there is a tipping point when you get a number of vehicles on the road, and this is one of those roads that is potentially close to that. Same with, for instance, Murray Point Road, which we are looking at submitting as part of possible asking for funding around a seal extension for that as well. So when you get a typical number of road people using that road, you have to grade it more because of corrugations and everything like that. It deteriorates faster. But there's only a couple of 3 roads in a district that are near that tipping point. If that makes sense.
Well, in terms of the traffic movements on that road, will the first 3 kilometres that was then eco sealed, would that suck up a lot of traffic movements, and thereby the next 3 kilometres might need graded less or maintain a higher level of service? Like, is a lot of the traffic just going that sort of 3 kilometres to the vineyards and then that's it, or are they using the whole road?
I would say that is the primary access for the recreational activities further on from there as well, in terms of up to like Finuka and those sort of dock recreation areas. The vineyards are definitely close to the road on that stretch. I would say that if we potentially had an approach about someone else funding the rest of that road, it would be considered in the same instance to this. The fact is, we allow for these to come to council on the basis that they're 100% funded by the landowners or the person making the approach. Otherwise, they wouldn't be considered because it wouldn't be cost effective for us to front up with $200,000 and then have that cost. But
so we'll still need grading the same amount of
the second part,
yeah.
Theoretically, yes,
yeah.
But maybe not. Someone might choose to turn right out of left out of their driveway instead of right out of their driveway and take the eco seal in, just because it's a better level of service going forward. But it is the section that's used the most.
Also, the traffic numbers would be 2 to 1 as well, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, or even potentially more.
Well, so I was going to say, I think we've been conservative saying, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. I presume we or our contractors under our supervision do the actual eco sealing and the people pay for it rather than they do and we inherit it, because I don't want to them.
kind of the same approach to land development where they would, we would approve the contractor and check the works.
Right, so we check
There-
it all close.
Absolutely. There'd be a level of expectation almost around an engineering approval process and an inspection process. I understand they have actually approached our contractor for their pricing. So
Cool.
yeah, we would. There's also a defects period of 12 months. So just for our protection.
Great. Well, thank you.
Do we need to do anything about what happens in 10 years' time type thing? We need to make it quite clear to the people that are saying that acknowledging that this is effectively a 10-year buy-in type thing and no guarantees that that we would necessarily go and reinstate the eco seal after 10 years, because that could be an expectation of these people.
I think there's always, though, this is not seal, this is a dust suppressant.
Yeah.
There's always the risk from, I mean, it is a gravel road and it will still be a gravel road. It just has a dust suppression layer on it. I would think that probably the expectation from these people in funding this is the fact that it will be renewed. And
the numbers stack up the same way they pay.
And the numbers do stack up too. And we wanted to make sure that in 10 years' time, that when we come to do it again, that it will be renewed. And we also had a conversation with Waka Kotahi around the fact of funding that renewal on this basis and that stepping up. And in principle, they agree it was a good idea to proceed with this.
Yeah.
I've got a question. What if, and it's obviously going to be used commercially, we had damage to it, where's the liability for there? If you have a truck turning on and breaks up, or someone drops a bucket of a loader or something on it, or a digger goes across, rips it up, where does that responsibility lie? Because obviously, are we sitting in the gun for the repairs and maintenance of a big potholes turn up?
After 12 months, we'll all be yes.
Yeah.
And just the same as anyone would be 100 metre length of eco steel. Typically, that's where the entrance to the house is, and that's typically where it's going to get ripped up, as opposed to the section that's not. It's going to be more so the access ways to these properties along that 3K lever that will probably show the signs where.
We have had other people approach us about eco seal or dust suppressing long sections, and we've said to them, no, council wouldn't be paying that, paying for that. And we would assess private funding around that, but it needs to be on a case by case basis because eco seals are not suitable in every area around seal network.
Yeah.
So this one's probably, from a geometry, it's a nice straight bit of road. It's probably a low risk scenario for us for long-term maintenance. And as QP said, I mean, if there was significant increases in traffic and increases and particularly heavy traffic that could push it towards that tipping point where you would have to do, a full seal on it, improvements to geometry and safety on the road, delineation, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Questions? Right, so we've got basically, jump to here, it's the button, recommending A and B, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if someone can move that, Taylor? Lily second it, all those in favour? Those against, carry, thank you very much, and stay on the same set of waste of legal road, 23.9.10. Guys.
I just can I just ask, because that's due at 1:30. I thought I seen Alistair Hamilton here earlier in the public forum. Is he, are we expecting him to come back? Did anybody know?
I wouldn't have
Any other reason, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I just don't.
Probably we need to step that one.
Well, whether or not someone's told him that the report's due at 1:30, that's the.
We're more than happy to.
Right, so we'll park that.
Thanks.
3.9, 3.9.10, we'll park that to 1:30 just in case the landowner's there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well done, Neil. Considering your starts.
Yeah.
Sharp.
Yeah.
Understanding your visual awareness of people around you. Amazing.
2 cakes for lunch for you.
You can have an extra biscuit for lunch now.
Yeah.
No, we're going to move on now to number 23.9.11 and Lee and Ryan at the table to present the 22-23 dog control policy and practices report. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Really, I just wanted to introduce Ryan, first and foremost. I don't think any or many of you have met Ryan. So Ryan's our team leader for enforcement and animal control, and not been with us that long, but doing an amazing job. And so this is going to be his first introduction to meeting yourselves, basically. But Ryan, I'll hand it to you.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Just presenting that 10A report today. We'll just take the document as read. Of note in that report, we've had a large reduction in terms of roaming dogs, which is a direct result of more education in the community and more buy-in from our customers. We'll continue to do that in other areas where we need to make improvements in terms of compliance there. Was there any questions in regards to that report in general? Has everyone had time to sort of read over it prior to today?
I look forward to it every year.
Thank you, Nick.
Any particular part?
Just great.
That's good to know.
Well, I'll make an observation apart from being a little bit facetious, but it's good to see that over the years, and as we've put more resource and effort into the relationship with people who've got dogs effectively and the wider community, that this report is showing, the result of that, I think, to a large extent. And while it's always going to be a bit of a vexed issue amongst some people, and the report is a bit of a rubber stamp, it does give us a good insight as to where we're at, what we're doing, and it's probably also quite helpful at the moment. So, it's really quite helpful. Any questions, Cheryl?
Got one. With microchipping, is there a way that you can, is there any enforcement that says you have to do it?
Yes, there is. In regards to dogs that are registered as pets, that requirement in the Dog Control Act, and that's an area where we're continuing to improve our data on that. Working dogs are not required to be registered, but every other.
That seems quite a lot that are not registered.
It is microchipping side of things, but that is put on because they are working dogs. It's my assessment. There isn't a requirement for that, but our pet dogs there are. So, you may recall in previous conversations when we've been saying that some register their dogs as working dogs because they're $12 instead of $55, and that's part of the work that Ryan and his team have been going through to educate our dog owners in relation to what is actually truly a working dog on a farm, moving stock, etc., versus the pet that's lying in front of the fire at home, just because of that sort of a discounting cost.
We just on that, we have 2,608 registered working dogs that are not required to be microchipped. So that's quite a number.
There's a lot of people who've got dogs. And you notice that with our accommodation, you get people coming in with dogs that don't tell you they've got dogs and they're in a unit. And you want to have cystitis management, which is measles. Every time we'll sell sheep from the Wedderburn farm, even though you're dosing your own dogs, the cystitis is there, so it's a big issue. But you will be there's a shearing season on now. There'll be a lot of big dogs, and that we get a transient population cruising in, and they'll have dog fights or something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs about.
This is coming through. I'll start then. No, sorry, just if I may have a question. Dog fees, really interesting and low in comparison to where I've come from. But with the plan works around the dog pound, the improvement that has to occur, and that this is a 100% user pay system. Are those fees going to meet the new cost of the new facilities and that?
So currently we've got in the dog reserves fund, we have got money that we can accommodate for the dog pound. There will be a report that will come back to you very, very soon in relation to some additional monies with the cost of building works going up. We don't want to start that project that we've already had allocated through the long-term plan, but there's an increase that we'll be seeking actually press go in relation to that plan for that side of things. Moving forward, that is a topic that we will be bringing back to this table with regards to whether or not an increase in those dog fees is necessary, not just for the ongoing service that we're providing, but also potentially for other facilities like dog waste bins that will be able to talk about in the past as well. And so that's part of that conversation in relation to the relevance of lower fees or increasing in those fees for the level of service that is needed in that community, basically.
And will that report likely look at the differential between working dogs and pets?
Absolutely. And I think we really need to retain that where we're looking at the level of work for Ryan and his team, it is more on the latter than it is the former for the obvious reasons.
Is there a chance to put another category in your working or pet dog?
There is, Stu, there's always that opportunity, and I think the balance that we need to find is that we don't have a system that requires more administration to deal with that, therefore more cost than what we've got at the moment. So it's something that, again, the team and I are looking at in relation to.
Because what's a working dog? $10, $12. If we made $15 for a hunting type dog, it's another category, but out of the 5,000 dogs you won't have in your category, a fair heap of them will be pig dogs or the duck dog or something like that, that actually, like we got, the person coming to us is like the spaniel, if you're hunting or you're doing whatever you do on a farm, that's a working dog.
For sure.
But technically in everyone else's house, it's a pet dog.
And that's a conversation that we'll bring back to this table in relation to how we want to classify those dogs, because there'll be some that are today at 55, but if you introduce a new category of working dog, that's going to go, if we use, let's say $20 for argument's sake, you're going to go 55 to 20, therefore your revenue for the level of service that's required is going to change.
Or it could go up, because you actually get those dogs won't be getting registered now.
Yeah.
You go around Ranford, the ones that run around there at night time and none of them will be registered.
Well, I can tell you somebody to my left that we will going around that night time to have a look at that.
Any other questions?
It's going to be around for the dog.
Recommendations, we received the reports, and I'd like to move that. Sarah, second. Stu, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
I'm just going to check with Alistair and see if he's coming.
Oh, okay.
I'll send a message.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to the first council paper. Nick, you're with us for the Future for Local Government review. Good to have you here, Nick. Welcome.
You've got a dog.
And Dylan. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Perfect. Yeah, great to be here. So the recommendation for this report is that it be received. The purpose of the report, you'll remember that there was a draft report, the Future for Local Government. We ran a couple of workshops, one at the end of last year, one earlier this year, and then submitted on that. So the purpose of this report is then to say, right, the final report was released in July of this year. What were the recommendations that came out of that final report, and then how did that relate to the submission that we made? And then, well, here we are, what next? And so that also sort of comes into the sort of, I guess, three sort of areas at play, and one's a sort of national discussion that Tim and Payne have been involved with LGNZ. Is looking at, well, how do we further any work that might be between councils in the region, and then there's sort of looking at, well, as an individual council, there's a number of things that potentially we might want to consider getting on with and doing. So happy to, this seems like an awful quick sort of thing for me, but yeah, it's just really trying to close the loop and bring back to you guys for that piece of work, what to landed.
Perhaps Tamer and I can update from there. We were in Wellington Sunday and Monday last week at a local government meeting on this. I'll go back a step from that though. I've been appointed to a national body, which is, I'm one of 7 mayors. There's 3 CEs and some EU representatives to go. Where do we go from here? Because this panel stopped its work, now it's gone. And the sense is if local government doesn't progress this, then no one will. And we know that some form of progression is needed. So the work that's being done now, which the panel is overseeing, is to try to get a sense of cohesion from the sector about which of these recommendations have got pretty good support, which of them can forget about it, and which are the ones in the middle that, hey, maybe if they were changed a bit or whatever, they could be tweaked into a form. So Tamer and I and Peter on this occasion, we're going to the next meeting. Anyway, we're going to the next meeting in November, which the funnel process of the first meeting will get down to something more firm in the second, and then that will come to councils across the country to try to get general consensus that these are the things that we really want to, as a sector, go to the central government, whoever that may be, with, and say, here's what we wish to progress. There seems to be a good sense in the sector that we can't just say, give us more money, that we have to look at ourselves as well. So that's where it's going. Tamer, you were there, what do you add?
Yeah, I think there was a real desire for LGNZ to recognise that one size doesn't fit all, and allow councils to have more autonomy over what the future looks like for them, and whether that involves working with or alongside our neighbours. There was quite a lot of talk about reaching compromise without compromising the values that we have for our areas, and that was kind of feedback from across the whole country. There were some feelings around this work being in a bit of a holding pattern while we wait to see the outcome of the next government. And then there was a really cool initiative around sourcing the best ideas from all the people that were there participating, and I understand it is going to come out in a document form for us to share, but I've sent a couple of photos through to Wayne. Some of you might have seen my video around what consensus looks like and the variety of opinions, and there were people from all sorts of different councils with all sorts of different views, and some of the things that you thought actually there'll be loads of consensus on this, there wasn't, and other things that you thought, gosh, nobody will be able to get on board together. People were going, oh yeah, no, we could. There were some tweaks around some words, like some people would prefer the word partnership to relationship and vice versa, and some of it was just minor details that they said, well, our community would probably be interested in a conversation about this if you tweaked it slightly to look like this. So I think there's nothing concrete will come out of our discussions. It'll be more part of this is what we can take back to our communities.
So how do you start those conversations? How do you say, well, we want to be a part of Clutha, or can you be part of each other's?
It's way more to it than that, but there's two ways it could go. Well, there's three ways it could go. The status quo could remain, which seems unlikely. If we're just talking about reorganisation, that seems unlikely. Councils could have sensible discussions, and that's where most people are saying is if we're going to be doing anything like that, it needs to be led by us. And we've already got 3, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 rapid councils talking about amalgamating. Or the third one would be, I would foresee if we don't sort some pathway forward, that pathway will be sorted for us. But what that looks like at this stage, anyway, nobody knows. Although I would say that the 2 models in the report both involve some degree of unitary councils, which is quite interesting. I mean, you could crystal ball gaze this a long way, and what we need to do is, in that's only one small part of the report, is to I think, create a pathway forward to sensible amalgamations, if necessary. I won't comment on where I think those amalgamations are sensible or not, but if we don't look at it, when I say we, I mean the whole sector, seriously, it'll be done to us. And again, I say the whole sector, I think 10,000 square kilometres area size will make us well down the list. But who knows?
No one will want to amalgamate with us.
You've got a council next door that's got a pretty big debt situation, and a council there that doesn't, and there might be some impetus come from central government.
Against the reverse.
Yeah.
We don't need anybody to amalgamate.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of talk about that as well, status quo not being feasible for a number of councils around the country because they just can't afford to pay for everything that needs done.
I mean, I can understand. I can understand where parts of us want to go one way and parts want to go another. And I just don't know, it's a mother's mess, so you take it as a whole region.
Who knows what the future holds? You may find that the Three Waters situation forces some degree of amalgamations of the whole rather than just of the water parts of us.
Well, if you look at the boundaries of Three Waters, it just about did that, didn't it?
Yeah. It really couldn't speculate other than we've got to be in front of it, not behind it, as a sector.
And it's interesting too with what both the political parties have come out and said as well, which is national. I'm not sure if they've changed their position, but they've been set as a priority in their first term. And Labour's probably got other priorities it wants to get on with. So this could actually bump down the priority list for the new government. So it's just going to be really interesting to everyone involved.
It will be really good if we don't drive it, it'll never get on their priority list. And the only way to get on their priority list is when councils start to break. and we're seeing that already.
Well, that's happening, isn't it?
Yeah. Any other questions, Matt?
Oh, no, just two things, probably before I go. The final report is actually much smaller than the draft report, so I encourage you, if you haven't dipped into it, to dip into it. And also that report does talk about, I mean, all they're doing is suggesting sort of timeframes and processes to move forward, and that's worthwhile, just thinking about how they thought about how it could step forward, how central government thought the process could, how they recommend central government to support in that, and that, yeah, just that's probably quite a get around. I did note in my report, which was a few months ago, Britain, that we took to an October workshop that might just get pushed out to November, given the national discussion, and also just seeing how things go on as well, and it's near October, so.
Yeah, I think there'll be no point in October because Cheryl.
So is this gonna have a grammatical review?
What's that?
Section 8, number 8 on system renewal.
I did spot one typo. Yes, was it the change at?
System, yeah.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we circle of
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Way.
Yeah, and I just have one other question, really, and it was just with it relates to the STV and the voting age. I thought, as we've sort of voted first past the post, I wondered whether that was really correct.
This was done before we made that vote.
So yeah, so would we not make a change or something? Yeah.
This is reflecting what we put in back when we did it.
So can we not make that pretty much? Is that,
When the, depending on what shape things come back to us, and that would be, that would potentially be one of the things that we'd have to think back again into the new look at it. But my take, and was it yours, Tony, was the STV stuff was like, let us decide ourselves rather than make it compulsory.
Yes, although they kind of thought that the feedback and some of the discussions in the whole room was that if it was going to be STV, everyone, then it would have to be a national education campaign, and not up to us to educate people. There was mixed reviews on whether people thought STV or First Past the Post was the preferential one, recognising that I think there's 15 councils in New Zealand that use STV. They're obviously quite pro it, but everybody else was pretty happy with where they're at, so I think that won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
okay.
And so for the voting age, it's before Parliament, the bill now, which we'll get there anyway, but
Yeah, okay.
yeah. They were interested.
That's what I know.
I get the chocolate fish.
Anything else, anybody? I think we just received the report. Somebody want to move that? Thank you, Thomas. Seconded, Neil. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Thank you. Oh, we're looking to Deborah for the. Oh, there you go. Couldn't see you. Sorry, hi, Paula.
Imposter.
You're an imposter today. You're always welcome, whether you're impostering or not. Yeah. Floor's yours.
Thank you. Kia ora. I'm just for PowerPoint presentation to come up. I'm here today to share with you a report that Deborah did pull together on our annual resident opinion survey. That was conducted between May and July this year.
Almost time of year. They're angriest.
So always the way you think, I'm gonna see.
And the prescribed medication hasn't arrived on the courier because it's frozen underneath.
There's a lot of talk about that this year with the inversion layer.
Mm.
Very unhappy.
What inversion layer?
The one that we have here, obviously not in the.
We put a survey out. We put a survey out.
Goodness for the wind that keeps the inversion layer away from problem.
What do you do one in the summertime?
It's all the hot air up your way, obviously. You've got it.
Oh, here we go.
I think you missed something about what I said. I wasn't here.
Oh, yes, of course.
Calgary, around, getting my cars.
I've been back for 6 weeks and then that's the 6 weeks work, just forgot that I was even away. Means I wasn't missed.
It shows how much you do when you're here.
Right, here we go.
Thank you for your patience. So this is the 8th consecutive year we've run this survey design. The purpose of this survey is to measure our performance in relation to how the community sees or satisfied with the work we do, and to identify some priorities and issues that we can focus on, or that the community feels we should be focusing on. So this year we used, again, Let's Talk as our online survey platform. We did that last year as well. The difference, last year we got 183 respondents, and this year we got 440, which pulled us back close to where we were tracking previous to bringing in Let's Talk. So there's a few elements we know that were going on last year when we run the survey. It was on the back of about 9 consultation pieces we did, and new people were done. And so this is encouraging to see this come up. What we are aware of is Let's Talk requires a registration process, and so we're watching that because it could be seen as a barrier. Anyway, that's where we are, that's what we've got, so it's looking better. You can see from our demographics, we had a higher response rate on females up from last year, which again was still high. It was 55% females last year. So females tend to like to do these surveys more than males, it would appear. Yeah, and we also had a higher proportion of a younger demographic this year, which was interesting. And I do have to say a thanks to our elected members, because I do know there are a couple of elected members who pushed hard on that last week before this closed, and we saw a spike in response rate. So big ups to you for doing that.
We all win, Sarah. We all win. But I win the most.
An observation for me I thought was quite pertinent here was that the census count says 54% of our population are under 50, and we got 52% of the responses from that age group. They actually line up quite well.
Yeah.
Between 50 and under, 50 and over.
Yeah, we were delighted.
Yeah, I would have thought that's, to get that sort of match,
Yes.
I thought was actually quite good. While it might not be quite so good within the under 50 age group, but the total was not bad, isn't it?
We're on our way.
Yeah. And for next winter it will be warmer. Yeah.
So this table, I know it's busy, but it does tell us quite a bit. This was a question that people were asked if they've used the survey, our services over the last 12 months, and how satisfied they were with what the services they experienced. So the little lines, the little snail trail on the top is last year's results, and the bar showed this year's results. I would like to point out some of those items listed along the bottom have got an asterisk on the end of them. That's because there were low response rates. So some of those services we do are only used by a few people. So that means that variability we have on that confidence in the response is a bigger margin. But for the full response rate, we were sort of plus or minus 5%. So the things where we did see improvements from last year in satisfaction were playgrounds, alcohol licensing, council's communications channels, water supply, and sort of right through unsealed roads, right through to waste minimisation. And we saw a dip in rubbish collection, recycling depots and community buildings. And if we think of what we've been up to in the last 12 months, there are no surprises there.
It's quite good to see that water satisfaction, like that's water supply kicking in there.
It showed through, so it gives us heart too that the feedback we're getting is sort of relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the satisfaction levels that were 90 or above sat in these activities: libraries, sports grounds, playgrounds, service centres, land information memorandum reports, and alcohol licensing. And areas where we dipped below 75% were the roads, noise control, waste minimisation, building consents, after hours services, community buildings and resource consents. And you can just see asterisks there that those activities, while they're still below, they have lifted from the previous year.
Yeah. After our service dropped quite significantly, if I remember right, I think the market will probably find it now though, but it was quite a surprising.
It's the second last.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so it's a small sampling.
Yeah. So it's a small sample.
But there are a couple of issues where there was some technical difficulties or something, and it wasn't written somewhere or.
Yeah.
And I know our staff are looking at that at the moment. So one of the questions that was asked if people have experienced problems or issues when they have dealt with our services. And so that the response overall, 34% said that they had experienced problems or issues, and that's dropped quite a lot from last year again. So that was really encouraging. We also asked, so that the issues that people commented on were things around footpaths and roads, water and rubbish collection. And then we also, there's a commentary piece where people could sort of give a bit of a rundown on what has gone on. So, ways that council could improve its service, people feedback about our communications, both externally and internally, our roading improvements overall, and in town, zebra crossings, speed limits around schools and facilities at parks, toilets were mentioned, and the swimming pools were mentioned, and it was related to temperature.
Well, we'll just get him a spa.
Off ice bath.
Another question we asked in the survey is how people would rate the priority issues. They think and they could choose up to 4. And so these were the priority issues for 2023 ranked here that people would think. And so you can see on that far right column the rankings relative to 2022. So there's a bit of a shift around. So some shifted and some stayed. Not surprisingly, recycling depots came out of like way down, up high.
Is that a Wastebusters issue?
Yeah.
Clearly, it's got to
Yeah.
Community development, interestingly, it's set at number 2 for the last 3 surveys. Equally, water supply set at number 1 for the previous 3 surveys that have now dropped. And again, that's relating to that water supply. That's, I suspect, that's changed in Alexandra. Yeah, so it's quite fascinating. The other thing that's moved up is that community halls and stadia. So they've gone from 7 up to 5 equal.
But that would be relevant to the number of people voted in Vincent and voted in Cromwell, not because respondents in the meeting total, so we wouldn't have any impact on that.
Well, certainly, I mean, I think we've got 19, so many total. So yes, you've got a higher response rate in Cromwell, and so
So we need to do that.
Splitting into wards, you get a better picture of where those the heat spots are for each particular ward, and how that compares to 2022. So Vincent, that recycling depot sitting number 1 there, but doesn't feature.
I think it's changed the menu total, isn't it?
Yeah, they got back to the fundamentals and basics of what they're elected, what we're meant to be doing.
Would most of your sealed roads be what the county in many times?
Yep.
Well, no, because all the way down to Maidstone and the council roads. And then I've got.
That back, but your community are unhappy with that, or?
The committee just generally unhappy.
At least they're happy now with it.
So other things on that,
TV system.
we, in this question, we can talk about how the people feel we have performed on our top priorities from last year, and people could be satisfied, dissatisfied, or unsure. So community development, this is broken down by ward. Community development, its scores look quite low in satisfaction, but that's because like 50% of people are unsure whether they are satisfied or dissatisfied. And similar with unsealed roads, they had quite an unsure response rate. Across the wards, the overall, the Vincent and Cromwell ward and Cheviot respondents were quite positive, and Manitoba and East Bay on the more satisfied.
Well, the next one, Paula, can I just ask, would you anticipate keeping that satisfied, dissatisfied, unsure, or would you get better data if you move to a kind of 1 to 5 ranking system, 5 being really happy, 1 being really unhappy? Because a lot of those responses were unsure, and then you just get a big bunch of nothingness.
It's a really good question. We used to be just satisfied, dissatisfied, and we thought, wow, that's difficult. We don't know what that means, because people are forced to make a decision. So we've pulled in the unsure, so I guess you've got a 3-point scale now. Yeah. But we could look into that and see. The benefit of running consistently year on year is you can compare trends. So if we make changes, we just have to make sure that we can mould the data so that we can have that. Yeah. But we can definitely look into that and see if the model is score.
And what we do as well is, if we want to, we can do the unsure unknown, and so you just be satisfied, dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's what we've done in some of the later questions. So these questions, there's 2 questions now. One was economic development, one on tourism, and these were brought in to give us a guide through our performance reporting pages to see how we're tracking. So economic development, and that question that's asked talks about specific things that have been focused for that work activity we're doing, and how satisfied people were with how they're tracking. So you can see there has been a lift there, that it's statistically significant. And tourism, it's sort of tracking similar. I mean, it's not a statistical enough difference to say that it's dropped, but it's around the bounds. Comments around these questions, I should add to people, add some comments around, for economic development, they like focus around housing, and then wanted some communication around what's happening and some community involvement and business support. With tourism, there was comments relating to more tourism to support businesses, and then varying views on the costs and benefits of having tourism coming into the area that was discussion.
So what is economic development?
Economic development is the word of McMahon's. So that.
I mean, and how, if you ask the person on the survey what it is and what do we do in that, what do we do in economic development? That's a measurable thing. Our job, I would feel, would be to enhance businesses to continue to work in an unrestricted environment or a regulated environment that's easy to do. But what does a survey person pick that up as?
That's the question that's asked. Goes to them, but you're right, and we think the same with tourism, the same potentially community development. People are not sure exactly what they are, and so maybe we'll be confusing all three of them across one another.
And that is the joy with statistics. You get an answer and generally it gives you 5 more questions. So all we can do is say, this is what we've seen and what we've reported on. And we have to be careful not to assume too much. It's just data and.
It's hardly an assumption. Assumption is.
For us, and for economic development in our context, and as we talk about it, is about our quality of life. And that's purely what it's about. Now, economics in terms of businesses play a really important part of that, but it's not solely about businesses.
So our next set of questions were around communications. Where people get information about council. So the 4 top methods, and they have stayed relatively consistent, you can see across the years. Community newspapers and newsletters, the website, Facebook and central app. So there's been a slight decline in community newsletters over the last 12 months and a slight increase in the website, and Facebook has stayed pretty stable. Things to consider when looking at this answer, I think, is a number of these people are responding, most respond online, so you've got potentially an online bias here. And the other thing too is the question says, where do you find out your information? So people might hear something somewhere, but go to the website for information. So just bear that in mind.
Just say that potentially online bias that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Where the gentleman speaking is meeting in a public forum who doesn't have access to internet and his questions are all around us.
Yes.
So
it's a really it's a challenging thing that we're aware of. Certainly it's a lot easier to get to people and it's a convenience to do online. We did have hard copies of these surveys and it's hard to know if people will know come and get them.
Well, that drop-in centre we had at Ranfurly, we had more than 19 people turned up to that for the day. Was that information correlated to be put in some form in the survey?
Only people who fill in the survey are considered in this because of the data credibility.
Because the information that you got there and what was at that drop-in centre were probably 2 different sets of information, and
Might have been the same 19 people.
well, I doubt it.
But equally, it's no good to get lots of layers of conversations with people because you do peel off different information from different formats. So a survey is only one thing, and it's certainly not the definition or how we're going to know how we're checking the community.
No, the other thing I should add with this as well is to remind yourselves of that demographic shift we saw in terms of the under 40s filling this in. So we'd anticipate they not do get more from digital rather than from. That's not necessarily reflective of the whole community, of course.
As far as satisfaction with council's communications are concerned, it's slightly higher level of satisfaction. Then opportunities to have to say, people have rated that relatively highly. So the other question we asked too was about contact with council. So I haven't got a slide for this, but 93% of our respondents have been in touch with council at least several times over the last 12 months, and the feedback, that's either by phone, by email or in person, and their feedback was really positive. So 92% reported that it was friendly and courteous, 83% said it was efficient, and 75% said that the issue was dealt with in an effective way.
Now, this is the slide you're all interested in.
Righto, look at that, eh?
Did you break it down by ward?
Have a look.
Satisfied, 91%, take a photo of that, guys, and put it on
Something out though, if you dig deeper into the statistics, Stu, they're 100% satisfied with the community board. It's in the next slide, mate.
So that's with council elected member performance.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you can't get boosted your pub and your bridges get washed out and your roads got potholes. Surely I'd want at least more than 10% to be upset with me.
There's room for improvement.
Come on.
These graphs are pretty self. The only thing I'd just like to add is that in the 2022 results, the level of satisfaction was 58%, so well done, members. And the other thing is just on that bottom wee pie chart, you can see that 50% of respondents were unsure or didn't know. So those of you who are putting stuff out on, having a chat, keep doing that so people know what you're up to.
91%, I'll take a picture of that.
I'll send you the slide.
There you go.
So, off the chart.
That's incredible though, isn't
Yeah.
But apparently I don't leave my shop, so no one sees me.
Yeah. No, you got some very nice comments, Sally.
That's pretty,
Yeah.
but that's pretty cool when you've got issues that we've got with bridges and just getting fair whack for both hospitals and that they're happy with what they're getting. But it is a good community.
From when I'm giving them a haul, you can tell, look.
it?
And
It stands
if you-
by being all Alexander's fault everyone.
And again, there's just a wee lift too from last year, 67% satisfaction with community boards, so good on you.
Going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction.
We're all aiming for 100%, just like Manny told
Yeah, well, we can have workshop over every day, you're more than welcome to come over and we'll tell you what has to happen.
It's gonna be a long
This
day.
is the same sort of iteration, questions, are your elected members making a positive difference? As the majority say, yes, you are, but there is the whole lot of people going, I don't know. So, I mean, and it's difficult, it's a local authority.
They don't know that the answer is yes.
The key thing is actually, don't know is far better than being actually dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's actually, it's not
Yeah.
a negative.
It's
Oh,
not.
and I totally agree with Tamar's comment, they just maybe just don't know what's going on and are prepared, able to be.
That big ones.
So from this data, these results, a number of these results feed directly into our performance measures that we report on an annual reporting and long-term plan. So we have some percentage targets that we set that can be quite arbitrary. We might have some people that are, like some departments that might fail on 85% and others are passed at 75%. It depends on the activity. Regardless, these feed into there and so this is useful for that. But over and above that, we think this data is a helpful guide to sort of let us understand what the community do see as their priorities for Central Otago District, and also some areas that we could maybe do some more work on. Some things we're always going to be losing on. If we're sitting down some legislation or some laws, people aren't going to be happy with that result. And so that's probably why we have these splits in percentage. But I think there's an opportunity here to acknowledge and celebrate what we are doing well, and an opportunity for us to understand and review where we are scoring a bit lower. And a goal for us and our team is to demonstrate to our communities, and those who take the time and effort to get involved in these surveys, that we are listening and we are taking this on board.
Thank you, very helpful. Comments or questions, councillors? There's just one I can't let go past. Page 507, the population in Alexandria has stayed static for years, etc., etc. I could almost say who wrote that. Just since we're here, 2013, the population of Alexandria is 4,800. 2018, the population of Alexandria was 5,472. And in 2022, it was 6,090. So between 2013 and 2022, it went up by almost 27%. And between 2018 and 2022, it went up by over 11%. It's just, I hear that comment so much that some people actually believe it true. So I try to combat it with every opportunity for what that's worth, because some people will never change their viewpoint. Don't name names. Someone will move the report.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Stuart.
You want us to highlight some bits?
See, I just want to know the 9% down.
You don't want to add and note how.
No.
Second, another recommendation.
Because we've had fantastic community board councils over there for the last 25 and 30 years, and it's nice to see that work, that some of them have done, it comes out in surveys now.
But when we get internet to the other 3/4 of the money tied, I will see that next year.
If you guys want any advice, just
Right,
give me a.
that, all those in favour, aye, against, carried, thank you. We will adjourn for lunch and come back at 1:30. That was a very good morning.
Well done.
Thank you.
Right. Just a caption and bomb.